In this video, you're going to learn the number one thing you need to do to become a more creative guitar player. Focusing on this one aspect will ensure you get good at guitar fast. Hi, this is Simon Candy from Acoustic Guitar Lessons Online.net. And what is this aspect that I'm speaking of? It is application. Now, I know it's not the most sexy topic, if you like, for guitar playing, but it is so important. If you can't apply the things that you've learned, then you haven't really learned anything at all. Application is absolutely crucial if you really want to learn the instrument. In this lesson, I sit down with guitar playing breakthrough specialist Tom Hess to discuss and demonstrate ways to apply the skills you learn into your guitar playing so that you can take the things that you learn and make them part of your playing, not just something that you're doing because you saw someone else do it and you just copy in exactly the way that they're doing it. That's a starting point, but you want to take those things and make them part of your playing. So we're going to talk about that and show you really effective ways to do it. I'll also show you my inside out application concept, which is a method for taking things outside of songs and applying them to songs, but also taking things from inside a song and taking it and applying it yourself outside of the song. Might sound a little confusing, but I'll explain it in this video today. So let's get to it. Now, we are going to be talking about application, essentially. And I find, just in my experience of teaching for many years, that a lot of people sometimes struggle to know exactly what that means. People mistakenly think sometimes it's just learning songs and playing examples and sort of having an illusion that they understand what's going on, but it's a lot more than that, of course. And perhaps to begin, your thoughts on application and perhaps application versus creativity, because I think they're very much related to each other, but they are separate things as well. So perhaps your thoughts on the importance of application and just the application versus creativity.
Well, application is really a sort of a subset of creativity. When you are applying something, you're not always being creative, but it's very hard to be creative without applying things that you know or can do or combining things together. And I think that, and I'm sure this will come up later when we talk, I think one of the challenges that guitar players have, particularly guitar students, is they have it in their mind that they need to learn something and then master it in isolation first before they even think about trying to use it, applying it, combining it, be creative with it. So application really is sort of a prerequisite for certain creative processes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think application is, I think first off, it's curiosity, thinking, well, what if I try doing this with this? What if I take this from here and just see what happens if I put it over here in this particular context? And if you're curious, you're applying stuff. And I think that the creativity just naturally flows from there. Yeah, isolated applications is interesting. I think that's important if you're going to take a concept like, for example, a particular scale that you want to get into your playing, perhaps a mode or some sound that you're not previously worked with much, then it will be a good idea to take that scale and play it over a number of different backing tracks, but to know that you really are just applying more there than perhaps creating and just trying out and hearing the scale in different contexts, different styles, perhaps different tempos, different feels. But then to create with that scale would then, well, to begin creating musical ideas with that scale instead of, just the pure hearing of it, leads you down that pathway of creativity and things start to eventuate from there, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Simon, that you gave the example of taking a scale and then applying it over multiple tracks. And that's particularly useful if those tracks are of different tempos or different rhythmic feels or different meters, perhaps different styles. And that helps one to think about, how do I make this fit this if it doesn't naturally fit there? What do I have to do to make this work and make it sound good?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that can be of a challenge early on is, you know, being able to take something that you're hearing in a certain context that's been introduced to you that way, and then being able to mold it to various different situations. You've got to take a little bit of creative license, if you like, and you know, change the timing or the phrasing of it, or whatever it might be, to have it work in different situations. Benefits of applying things to your own playing. What's this going to give you that, say, if you never bothered applying anything, what are some of the benefits, in your opinion, Thomas, in regards to, you know, applying the things that you learn?
Well, I think there are probably three I can think of off the top of my head. The first one is that it's fun. I mean, it makes guitar playing fun when you can, or more fun when you can take something you know and then use it, versus just, you know, playing a song that you've memorized. And it's sort of the difference between playing guitar and creating music with the guitar. It's a different thing totally. And it could be fun to play your favorite songs or whatever, but I think it's a lot more fun, particularly when you start getting good at it, to improvise, to write your own songs, make arrangements of existing songs. So the point is, one of the benefits of applying what you know is it just simply keeps things fun, keeps things interesting, and makes things more fun. The second is that when you are used to applying things, when this is something that you do in your practice, you dedicate some practice time to taking what you've learned and now applying it somewhere. This makes learning other things in the future easier, because you start to see earlier on, you start to see faster how this could be applied beyond maybe the most obvious way. So if you're not used to, or you don't spend a lot of time dedicated just to applying what you learn, then often when people do try to apply things, they may do so in only the most basic way. Now, for example, if you learn, let's say, in a minor arpeggio, and then you learn it on A, so now it's A minor, right? Where are you going to apply this? Probably over an A minor chord, and that's fine. It certainly works there, but can and does it work anywhere else? And the answer to that question, of course, is yes. But if you're not used to working on applying things in multiple contexts, some people may not know, or may not know how you would take an A minor arpeggio and superimpose it over something else, over an F chord, for example, to use a simple example. So it just makes learning new things easier. And I guess the third thing is to say is that application is the whole point, right? It's the whole reason why we're playing. I mean, we don't seek out new information or new techniques or new music theory knowledge or new skills just to accumulate skills. Okay. So if you think about every technique that you know, or thing that you can do, or music theory concept that you understand, or something that you can hear, oral skills, is each one of those is a brick. Okay. Well, the goal is not to collect bricks. It's like the little kid who plays with Legos. The goal isn't to acquire more Legos. The goal is to build something with the Legos you have, and then go ask mommy for more. Okay? That's sort of the point here. Is if you just have a collection of bricks or Legos doesn't, I guess you could brag about how many Legos you have, but you can't do anything with it. What's the point, really? So I think that's really the biggest benefit, is it makes everything worth it. All the effort, the struggle, the periods of frustration, it makes it all worth it when you can apply the things that you've learned.
In terms of applications, I mean, you've spoken of some already, but other methods and strategies for applying musical concepts to your playing. So if you're someone who struggles to, you know, really understand what it is to apply something, how would you suggest to go about that?
One thing that's pretty useful, a useful tool that people can use, is sequencing. So if you have let's say a scale, it could be an arpeggio sequence or a scale sequence. Probably scale sequences would be easier to talk about. If you have like a sequence of thirds or a sequence of fours, or whatever, any type of scale sequence where you're sequencing the scale up or down or whatever, simply by trying to adjust the starting point or the ending point of the sequence to fit a particular chord. So, for example, if we're in C major, and I'm going to play a sequence of thirds descending down the scale, maybe starting from the C note, the root of the scale, that's going to sound, that C note is going to be a chord tone over the C chord, over the A minor chord, and over the F chord. It'll be in the triad of all three of those. But if the chord is G or G7 that's being played, that C note that the sequence starts on, this would be the fourth or the 11th. So certainly you can begin the sequence there on the 11th, but it's not a chord tone, okay? And perhaps in a non-jazz style, it might be more pleasing to the ear within those other styles to begin the sequence on one of the notes of the G7 chord, so G, B, D, or F. But C and A, those are not really maybe the best place, the best fit to start the sequence on without it starting to sound a little bit outside. So that's one thing, is you take a sequence and let's say you've got a chord progression and there's 4 chords and it's, C, F, A minor 7, and G7. Start playing the sequence at different points to match each chord. And not only the starting point, but its ending point. When the sequence ends, the final note of the sequence, a note that perhaps you're going to sustain, it typically is going to sound better if that note sounds good against that chord. So it doesn't have to be a note in the triad. Certainly you could end on the 9th if that's the sound you're looking for. But among a lot of amateur players or students, when they end on the 9th, it's not because they're going for that cool 9th sound. It's just because they missed the chord tone and they didn't calculate, oh, I should have ended it here on the 3rd or the root or whatever. It's not intentional that they ended up on the 9th. They just kind of end up there. So this is a good way to practice with sequencing, to apply the sequence over different chords. That's one example, thinking about the starting and ending points. Another example using sequences again would be to adjust the rhythm to fit the tempo. Okay, so for example, and I don't just simply mean going from 100 beats per minute to 120 beats per minute. All that would simply mean is you got to play the sequence a little faster, or you cut the sequence down in half, and then it's like 60% of that speed or whatever it is. I don't mean just in that simplistic way, but you can also take sequences that maybe are designed as groups of 4, like a 16th notes or whatever, and you could play them in groups of 7 or groups of 3. As tempos change, by simply changing the division, you don't necessarily need to change the speed of the sequence, even if the tempo from one song to another is vastly different. If you change those 16th notes, make each one of those notes equal, let's say an 8th note triplet, then you're able to fit this into a totally different tempo. So, or a septuplet or whatever else. I'll give you one more example about different approaches to applying musical concepts is simple phrasing. So if you take something that is normal, like let's say a rock or a metal lick or whatever, that's not going to typically be in swung 8th notes or anything like that. So they're 8ths or 16ths or whatever. And then you put it into a swing feel or an 8th note triplet feel or whatever. Now you can create a swing feel out of something that didn't start out that way, or vice versa. You could take a blues or a jazz lick that may be with a shuffle feel or swing feel, and you can simply straighten it out. The lick gets sped up that way. But you can take licks that are cool in one style and import them into your style without it sounding still like a swung 8th note feel or a jazz feel. So in other words, you can rip off the lick without ripping off the style. So it fits better into what it is that you're doing. And that can go in either direction.
The other thing with application, I think you've got to be patient too. I mean, it's not going to be, if you're going to, like you were saying, when you're talking about sequencing and, making things fit over chord progressions, I tend to sort of begin by, if I'm going through that process, I got a sequence, I just kind of window shop it. I just dump it on top of the track and just listen to how it sounds, and not trying to do too much more initially, just to listen. and then to sort of, react to what I'm hearing and making it fit. But if you're particularly new to that sort of thing, you've got to sort of go through that process of applying stuff. And if you haven't done it before, you've got to be patient. It's better to do it badly than not do it at all, because you're going to get better at doing it naturally as you do it more. So I often say, just do a really bad job of it, because that's going to be way better than doing nothing, And I find that even now when I apply new concepts to my playing, I could sit there and think they sound pretty average, because they probably do, because it's just the beginning of taking something and applying it. But you keep doing it and you find ways to improve it, and each time you come back to it, you can refine it, and the overall skill of applying gets better. But even still, when you are in the early stages of applying a new thing, you got to give it time. One thing I do a lot, and I teach just an idea of how to an example of application. I like to call it inside outside application, and then outside inside, and it's all to do with around a song. So if we had a song like Purple Haze, Jimi Hendrix, for example. So if I wanted to do some inside out application, the idea is to look at the song and pick something that's happening in the song, take it out of that song and apply it to something else outside. So it's inside the song, we take it out and we apply it. So it could be the intro solo is pentatonic based bluesy sort of playing. So you could take that, literally that solo, and just play it on top of a blues track, and it would sound completely different already. No one's going to sit there and go Purple Haze. It's going to sound completely different. And then as you do that a little bit more, you'll be able to, mold it to fit the blues track. But you'd be surprised sort of how great it can sound just straight off the bat. Or you could take the 7#9 chord that's in that song. You could think, well, how can I use this in my playing? And you could use it in a blues context again, or anywhere there's a 7 chord, try the 7#9. That chord's a great chord to finish songs on sometimes. You could take chord extensions that are happening in the song. You could take the Dorian mode that the solo is based around in that song and think, okay, well, let's explore this sound, and take not so much the riffs of the solo, not the details, but the concept behind it. So that's like inside out, taking something inside the song and applying it outside. And outside in is more taking a concept that you're working with and putting it into the song. So for example, Purple Haze, maybe you're working on triad shapes. So use Purple Haze as a vehicle to train those triad shapes and voice the chord progression using all different triad permutations across the fretboard. Or maybe it's phrasing, and you can take the solo and phrase it differently, or you can improvise over the solo using arpeggios. The idea is you're just using the song as a vehicle to apply skills. If you would like help with your finger picking, the kind of help that gets you results in the most direct, efficient, fun way possible, then check out the Ultimate Fingerpicking Guitar course, a complete system for fingerpicking acoustic guitar, so simple even a beginner can learn it. I've carefully designed this course to do all the heavy lifting for you, as far as knowing exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it in regard to mastering the art of fingerpicking guitar. All you have to do is follow the pathway I've laid out for you. In the Ultimate Fingerpicking Guitar course, you will learn and master all the key concepts, methods, strategies, and techniques needed for fingerpicking, so you'll never put your guitar down in frustration again, thinking, how the hell do I do this? You will also discover the exact order in which to do things, avoiding the all too common mistakes most people make when learning to fingerpick guitar, saving you precious time and frustration. Have your hand held every step of the way with the Ultimate Fingerpicking Guitar course. It will take you from wherever you are at right now with your fingerpicking to where you would like to be, enjoying every part of the process along the way. So click the link in the description below the video and check out the Ultimate Fingerpicking Guitar course. Let me know in the comment section below this video what acoustic guitar topics you'd like to see covered in future videos. I read all comments and I answer and reply to you, so don't be shy, drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, then hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and of course hit the all important notification bell button so YouTube can tell you when I've released a new video. This is Simon Candy from acousticguitarlessonsonline.net, As always, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.